wine. You know, there are this is little difficult, but I'll put it into you this way. In order to be a connoisseur of wines, you have to be somebody who will take a glass of wine, will smell it, will look at the color of it, and will test it. And he will tell you that this has smack that contains some apples, some oak, some berries, and the bouquet is very nice, and the vintage is the vintage of this wine is the most important thing. This is for connoisseur to be. I'm not a connoisseur. I like wine. I'm not alcoholic, but I like my bottle of wine, and I drink maybe 2 glasses or 3 glasses of wine a day. Oh,
Hey, Flash.
here he came. Here he comes. He wants to know whether we eat something in here. No, we don't have to eat. Anyways, Irene and Leif, as you know, they have a vineyard in Italy, and they have wine which they produce themselves, and since they work on wine, I used to do that. We used to go to Italy practically every year. No, Flash, you better go. Flash,
Come on, Flash.
come on. Well, you know, I take a glass of wine to my hand. I do the same thing that professional people do. And taste it. I cannot smell it because I lost the sense of smell. That's also one of the things I lost in the war. But, and I test it, and I decide, yes, I like this wine. This is the wine which doesn't have any chemicals, or doesn't have the oak. And the people can talk about oak barrels for hours. They buy Irish oak, and they buy barrels made in Yugoslavia, old Yugoslavia, which is Slavic oak, and they buy the oak from most of the thing, and they like the smell of it, and they like the taste of it. I don't. When I get something like that, I don't know. Now, when it comes to wine, the important thing in wine is the natural sugar that the wine has. Natural sugar is something that the grapes must have sugar in order to be able to become a good wine later. Otherwise, it's a grape juice.
Yeah.
Now, there are 2 different kinds of wine, maybe more than 2, but as far as I am concerned, besides whether it was a yellow wine, or red wine, or white wine, or pink wine, that's the color of the wine and the kind of grapes they use for it. But there are the main things which I consider the important dividing of wines is one is the table wine, and the other wine is the vintage wine. Vintage wine, that means that the wine which was harvested in 1992 or 3 is an excellent year for it, because what comes into the vintage is the type of the ground that you have. Because some of the ground has lot of slates in it, rocks.
Yeah.
And wine requires a lot of sun. And the sun goes through this air. If it's a sand, you get a wine, but this is not a good wine. That's like Manashevich wine in here, or like the Taylor wine in some place, even in California. The wine which is in Sonoma, or wine in those wine producing countries, usually started by the Italians or by the French, but most of it is Italians, which came as immigrants to this country. They started making wine here, so they selected ground where they planted the wine trees. And the other wine is the table wine. Table wine is a wine that you go to a restaurant in Italy and you tell them, okay, give me your house wine. Otherwise they bring you a bottle of wine and it's $40, $30, $15, $150. It's, that the prices are various. And the table wine is usually a mixture of grapes from different parts of Italy. Now, if you know something about grapes, and I happen to know something, I don't know as much as professionals do, but as a customer who buys wines, I know that the grapes which come from vicinity of Venice, the name of the place is Venezia, which is Venezia is the whole I would say state. Like we have states and we have townships and things like that. So those wines are the wines I like. The other kind of the wines which I like are different Chiantis. Chiantis are from middle part of Italy, and they have also fantastic wines, the Chiantis around, Venezia, I want to say, also has the wines which are in, well, close to northern part of Italy, close to the mountains already. Where Cortina d'Ampezzo, where the skiing is in mountains, and they have a lot of good wines from over there. And then you have wines in lower part of Italy, which is Reggio di Calabria. If this is the Italian boot, okay? Here's the Mediterranean. Here's the Mediterranean. And here's Sicily. And here, in this area, is Reggio di Calabria. And in Calabria they have a wonderful wine right close to the Mediterranean side of it. And it's a place called Squinzano, which actually introduced me to wine, because I was a young guy when the war started. I didn't know anything about wine, I didn't drink wine. I was too young for it. I was in the army, because when we came over to Near East, we didn't have any papers. So since I wanted to be in the army, I didn't want to do anything else. So I told the people that how old I am. my passport didn't exist over there. And so my brothers also, my father had a passport, my mother had a passport, because they traveled to Italy very often. And we didn't have, we traveled to Italy with them, but we were on my mother's passport, because my father was in Italy at least 12 times a year. Once a month he used to go to Italy. And my mother used to go with him during the summer, and sometimes we went with my mother, my brother and myself, but we were on my mother's passport. But anyway, from passport back to wine. So in Squinzano, this is the place that we liberated when we landed in Italy. I tried the local wine, and I liked it very much. Many years later, I discovered, already when I was in America, that the same wine, Squinzano wine, is now the best known wine in this part of Italy, but you cannot get them because most of it was bought out by the Germans, and they take it to Germany, like coffee, like the Kona coffee. Coffee from Kona, from Hawaii. The whole crop has been, for years already, from before the war, is sold to the Germans, and Germans make coffee out of it over there. So, this is the wine I liked very much, and I just discovered recently that yes, they are now very sophisticated producers of the best wine from that area, but you cannot get it because it's only bought. Unless you go there and you buy locally from local farmer, his own wine will give you his own bottle in it, then you have to do away without this wine. But then it's a question of French wines. Everybody knows that French wines are very good. However, every country has a different law as far as the sugar is concerned. In France, the only wines to which they don't give outside sugar are wines by Rothschild family. Rothschild family has a wine which is called Mouton Cadet, and they have red Mouton Cadet, and they have white Mouton Cadet. And this is the only wine, French wine which I can buy. Look, if you want to buy French wine, there's no limit how much you can get for a bottle. Some of them are really fabulous. I don't have the kind of money, I never had, and I never enjoyed it so much. Spend $150 for a bottle of wine? Yeah. I buy my wine now from Brothers in here, and that's the same place what your father buys. Tom buys the wine, or some other people that have that. But the French wine, sure, I buy once in a while. I bought the Bordeaux or Bourguignon wines because they are specific. They have the taste I like, and if I buy a whole case, I can get a little better price for it. Now, Bordeaux, Bourguignon wines in here are very expensive. And I would say, from my own knowledge, the best red wine that you can get is American red wine. To the extent that Italians, and I was with KLM, Royal Dutch Airlines, and our ships were going all over United States. And they used to go to California and they bought up a shipload of good American red wines. because Europe was grabbing it. They're better than anybody else's. But the good American wine cost much more in Europe than the Italian wines. This is why I don't buy American wines. Once in a while I have something nice, but usually I don't buy American wines because they're too expensive for me.
Mhm.
That much I can tell you about wines. That was Leif.
Mm.
He's calling from Sweden. He went yesterday. He went yesterday to Sweden,
Wow.
and fortunately, they didn't have any problem with Arabs yet.
Mhm.
They have a lot of Arabs because Swedish government was permitting a lot of people to come in to Sweden, and a lot of refugees used to go there, and they permitted them to come in, and they started bringing families and so on. So right now they made it difficult for them to come in, but those which are there, they have to comply with the Swedish law, otherwise they'll be sent back.
Yeah.
So since they have a good life, the Arabs don't come there anymore. They have plenty of them already.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
I think
the American wines are very good and very expensive. That's why I don't buy them. And you know, this is like if you go to a restaurant and the restaurant does not have a license, then you bring your own bottle. But if they have license, they charge you so-called cork fee. If you bring your own bottle, they charge you $15, $20, $30, depends how expensive it is.
Mhm.
And otherwise you have to buy their own brand, and you pay for the minimum you pay for a decent restaurant you pay minimum is $40 or $35 for a bottle of wine.
Yeah.
And that's why I buy the Italian wine. I show you something that I have. It's very funny, but this is the logo.
Mhm.
Yeah, the logo is a heart because he is a cardiologist. They have a heart. It's called Cascina del Cuore. It means house of the heart.
Mm.
And this is in their basement, which is called Cantina. And in here, the guy who sold them the house had his own wine. And his best wine, he kept it behind those bars.
Okay.
And when I came over, that was when they bought the house. They bought partially, they bought part of the house, and then they bought the rest of it. And the guy, I spoke Italian, so he invited me to his house to tell me how nice neighbors are, and he let me try his wife. He had the Barbera wine. Barbera is the kind that they have now. I tried the wine, it tasted like kerosene. God, I almost died when I drove something of it. I came back. So they told me, yeah, this guy must have found the wine when they had the monastery over there, and the monks used to make wine,
Oh, okay.
but was 200 years ago. So museum value of the wine was very high, but the taste of it was terrible. Because even the wine, even the best wine, to my knowledge, I don't know, maybe some old wine which is more than 200 years old, but to my knowledge that after 100 years, most of the wine turned into acid,
Yeah.
you know, so, but he was a very crazy man anyway, so they bought his part of the house too, they connected both parts, and now they have the beautiful house that they live in. They have a swimming pool, they air conditioned it, and it's a beautiful place to be. That's about wine. Anytime you want me to talk about wine, I can always tell you a story about it, connection with it. But for your own knowledge, you have to remember that there is a Corsair's wine, and that's house wine. House table wine are the wines that you can go to a good restaurant, you ask them for their own house wine, they come in and tell you. That's in Europe. In America, they usually sell you some other wines, you know. But they give you their own wine. That's something for you to remember.
Great.